So as we go through and start closing out the sermon series, I want to go back just real quick and just touch on everything that we have covered so far. With Isaac covering on singleness, how to go through and center yourself in Jesus, and learn how to go through and just be confident in yourself. Then we covered marriages, finance, intimacy, and conflict. How to utilize both your spouse and yourself, strengths and weaknesses, to improve your lives, worship God, and build a better relationship. So now all of these are going to be really critical, and we're all going to go through and challenge ourselves to improve on all of them, every day, every week, every month, every year. But as we go through and start looking at today's message of children, I want to look at them more as a fundamental basis that we have to work on ourselves to ensure our children are seeing the exact same thing. There's a Ben Stiller movie. There's a line in there where it says, a kid's mind is like a sponge. And I think that's very true because everything they see and what they're going to do is what they're going to see you do. So it's our jobs as parents and as a congregation to make sure that they see a true and honest love of other people, our spouse, themselves, and our Lord. So as I was going through and I was preparing for all of this message, I actually did a lot more prep work this time. Now, as far as actually getting it written, I'm a procrastinator, but I did a lot of research. I listened to a lot of YouTube videos, honestly. I did a lot of reading. Josh gave me some great books to go through and look into, but nothing, they're wonderful messages. I got a lot out of them, but I couldn't remember them. I was having a hard time going through and being able to adapt my story to that to be able to go through and deliver that message. And especially now with Sarah and I only having two little kids, maxing out at 3 years old, I can't go through and tell half of you how to go through and raise kids to adulthood anyways. So how can I do that? But what I can do, I started thinking just about all my own life experiences, things I've learned, how I was raised. So this is going to be a little bit of story about myself, but then just some of my own experiences. So my father is one of the wisest guys I know. I'm sure a lot of boys are going to say that about their dad, but my dad's more wise. So every time I would ask him a question growing up, he would almost never, answer the question directly. It was always an analogy. It was always some bigger picture that you had to go through and kind of piece apart and try to understand. That was really frustrating when you're just trying to go through and learn just a small little task, and he gives you kind of just this vague opening statement and then just leaves it there and you just got to figure it out. So all the other stories in life or things that I learned from my father, all the big conversations about how to be single, how to date, who to marry, when to get married, what kind of job to get, everything like that, he never answered directly. It was always some kind of an analogy about either raising or working livestock. Every time. That was it. It was just either about dogs or horses. You can only imagine what the marriage portion of that was in that analogy. So my whole life we used and trained border collies for cattle dogs. They were a useful tool. They went through and you could utilize them to go through and gather. You could push, sort, work, everything that effect. So the time that Sarah and I found out that we were expecting Joey, went over to Mom and Dad's house. We had a little orange ear tag that we used for all of our cattle, rice, number 1. Gave that to Mom and Dad. 5 minutes later, we're having a grandkid. Oh yeah, all right. But at the same time, we had a load of cattle coming in. Dad and I had to go work. So we were getting ready to go through and get them ready for winter. So we start working them through, most likely in silence as all the other times. And finally I just asked Dad, how am I going to raise a kid? How do you do that? How do you know what to do? So he goes through and sings Gus, his dog, goes, gathers and brings him in, puts him in the tub, and he just kind of pointed over at Gus and smiled and said, just like a good cattle dog, that's it. What? That doesn't make any sense. A dog is not a kid, kid's not a dog. Well, I can tell you now that I have a 1.5-year-old boy that likes to bite and chew on everything. So I mean, it's pretty close, at least at this age. But that's the analogy. Now, the farther I've gotten into it, and as I go through and look into the future of what I want my kids to be, every time Sarah and I start talking about kind of where we want them to end up at, what we want them to look like in their journey with Christ, my analogy of working a dog and training a dog always comes into play. So you're going to have to follow me a little bit on this, but hopefully you guys will be able to decipher some of the message. So I want to break down the process of training a cattle dog in 3 steps. Step 1, trust and love. Step 2, building a foundation. And the third one is the gather. So for trust and love, you can only imagine this is the point in time where you get that cute little ball of fur puppy. They're biting, chewing on things. They have no idea what they're doing. They're just happy to be there. And you're going to show them all that love and affection that you can. You're going to go through and prove to them that they can trust you, that you're going to trust them, and every time you guys are together, it's going to be a good team. It's going to be a good pair. At the same time, after you go through and get that established, you start working on just the little basic commands of sit, down, come, stop, no. And then after you get some of that figured out, they grow up just a little bit, then you start going through and exposing them to the stock, to the livestock or the cattle. This is what they're bred for. They have this innate ability to know whenever they see that stock that they need to go and be with it. They need to go through, make an impact on it, move it, and bring it back. But they don't know how to do that yet. All they know is they just get excited. Now, when you go through and take that dog in this little pen, you got stock that's about 100 times its size. Some of them are going to go through and just actively start chasing and pursuing, moving that stock. But most of them at that age, you're going to go through, they're going to run to the corner. Now, they might look at and give a little yip or a bark, but they still don't have that confidence yet. So that's why during this trust and love, especially the exposure to stock, that's where we're going to go through, we grab that puppy. We're going to love, we're going to pet, and show that it's okay and that it can trust you. But the stock is where it needs to be, and that is what it needs to go through and learn how to navigate. So this is where Sarah and I are in our little journey of our adventure of raising kids. Like I said, we have a 1.5-year-old and a 3-year-old. What we're trying to do is we just want to go through and show them the love and affection that Jesus shows us. We want to show that we can be trusted and that he can be trusted. Now, the only thing about kids compared to taking that border collie into the pen, that border collie, for some reason, God gave them the gift to understand that they want to be with that stock. As children, not all of them are going to go through and really understand what God is or who God is, or they want to be with it. So they need to see some form of excitement. So our jobs as parents or as a congregation is to establish that excitement. To let them know that when we are with God, when we're talking to God, when we're praying to God, that's an exciting moment. And that's to go through, and we need to go through and praise that. Also during this time, we're going to start teaching them some basic manners. Please and thank you. Good job, and no. No, Garrett, quit biting Joey. Stop doing that. Why did you put your hand in the toilet again? Right, Sarah? I mean, that was more freaking than what you want to know. So, we got to work on Joey flushing too, But also during this time, we want to go through and teach them how to love and respect people, how to be excited around other people, and know that they can trust them. Now, how are they going to know that? How do they know automatically that they just want to go up and be kind and respectful to their friend at preschool or at daycare? Yet again, that's our job as parents and a congregation. It takes a village to raise a child. to go through and show how to treat, love, and respect everybody else around you. Just like Jesus loves and respects us. All right, now onto the foundation of the cattle dog. This is the meat and potatoes of the process. So at this point, the dog has grown up a little bit. It's getting bigger, it can move, it's a little more agile, still adolescent, still has a shorter attention span, but it still wants to learn. It wants to be with that stock, and it knows that it needs to get on that side of the stock and bring it here. But how does it do that? Can't turn it loose because it doesn't really know what to do at that point. So during this time, we're going to go through and take them about a 10 by 10 pen. There might be 1 or 2 animals in there to go through and work. It's going to be very confined, so everything's within reach. I can go through and protect it if the stock goes through, I push it. I can go through and bring it back if it makes a mistake. So you walk into the pen, you drop the dog down, we already covered down, right? And then we send it away, or to the right. We're going to send it about 3 steps, and we're going to tell it to lay down. It's going to lay there, the stock's going to drift off, it can sit and kind of focus on what it just learned, and then we call it back. Now we're going to send it the other way, go by, to the left. Take 2 or 3 more steps, we're going to drop it again. That stock drifts off, and it sits there and focuses. Call it back, pet it, love it, reaffirm that it did the right thing. Over time, we're going to start building this pen bigger and bigger and bigger. You just go farther and farther. Next time, it might be a quarter of the way up sanctuary, half the sanctuary, 3/4, or the whole sanctuary. The whole time, you just keep sending it right and left, away and go by. You're going to send it farther, let it notice what it's doing right, bring it back to reaffirm that. During this time also, as that dog starts getting farther and farther away from me as a trainer, I don't have as much control of its safety. Now I can still bring it back, go through and reaffirm what it just learned, or if it did get pushed back or anything like that, but I can't control everything from a distance. This is when the stock is going to start testing the dog. There might be one in there that's tired of being pushed, that's tired of getting driven to wherever that dog goes. So it's going to turn around, front up to the dog. And typically in this scenario, on a young dog, you have 2 options, how they're going to handle it. One, they're overconfident and they go nuts. Or they're under. Most of the time, they're going to be lacking that confidence. They're going to back down or run to the corner and hide. And then you have to go and get them back, build that confidence up, and establish it. So this is the opportunity, again, to teach that dog confidence at a distance. So as a trainer, we have to have that confidence to go through and push that animal back as well. So at that point, I know if any of you have worked cattle or seen cattle work, every potload of cattle you get, there is always one that wants to run you over. Every time. And they always seem to be this high-headed black baldy calf, but that's just my experience. But we have to have that confidence to be able to walk up to that calf and demonstrate the confidence for that dog so it knows that it can stand its ground. On all the training that we've already covered, all the belief that I put in that dog, it can stand its ground and push that back away. Now this is where, for the children, we start teaching to love with all your heart, love with all of your soul, and love with all of your strength. This is where the children are going to get challenged in their faith as we build these fundamentals. It's not a safe area to where you can just build everything and then put them out into the world. They're going to constantly be challenged from 5 years old to 18, 20, 30 years old. Our job as parents and as a congregation is to go through and build that confidence and equip them with everything they need to be able to stand their ground and have a firm belief in Jesus. So as the dog, we started out small. We sent him away, and we were able to bring him back. I think a preschool for Joey right now. I can't be with her half the day. Most of the time, she is a sweet, sweet little girl. But she doesn't have a nap. She can be pretty aggressive. So you just hope that she had a good night's sleep. But I can't control that. But we get the report. We come back. I bring her back to us, me and Sarah, and we're able to go through and sit down, have that conversation. And then she always says, well, we can just pray about it. This is the time where the children are looking to us to understand how they're going to react to all their different challenges and struggles in life, as well as how to truly worship our Lord. So this is the time to go through and have that opportunity. Pray with them. Intentionally pray with them. Pray when you're hurt. Pray when you're happy. Pray when you're sad. Pray when you're thankful. Have that conversation with them to God so they can hear how those are supposed to go. That we are truly thankful for what He gives us, and they can feel that. All right, the last step, the gather, the grandiose ending. So you take the dog, you walk out, and it's time to go through and pull cattle off this big pasture. We got 480 acres, we got 150 head out there. I don't know where they're at, neither does the dog. I just know they're out there. You bring the dog through the gate of the pen, lay it down right next to the fence, and you send it to go by. You send it on the run. It has no idea where the cattle are. Now these dogs, as you train them up, you love them. And for me, some of them have kind of been a little expensive. So if you send that dog out, it runs over the hill, your heart sinks a little bit because you don't know if it's going to come back. But as soon as you send that dog, you immediately start thinking, I hope it has enough confidence if it runs into a tough one. Hopefully, the training we did, it can actually get to the backside of the cattle and bring them back. Because you don't know if it's going to get over there on the backside and actually pull them all in, or if it's going to go through and split the group, run them through a fence, or, like I said, it could just keep running. When I was 7 years old, we had this border collie show up to the house. We ended up calling her Maud. She was nuts. Every time we'd go through and let her out of the pen, she would run the 30 acres at our house for about 15 minutes, and you had about a 50-50 chance that she was actually going to come back. So there are those that you just don't know. But pretty soon, after a few minutes, over the hill you see one calf pop over. Then you got 3, 5, 10, another 20. Then you got the rest of the group coming up, nice little dust pile like you see in the movies. And it's a beautiful sight as that dog is trailing in behind, drifting back and forth, making sure the herd's safe, and they're moving quietly back to me. So then they go through, you open up the gate, he pushes them into the pen, you drop it, tell him down, go and pet and love on him, reaffirm all the good things he did. That's where a training dog turns into a trained dog, a good dog. They're able to go through, you send one of them out, and they can bring hundreds back. Depending on the pasture size, right? Maybe 5, but so this part right here and the part of raising the kids, I could wait, right? This is the part where you're sending them out of your home potentially to college, to a new job, anytime in that life where you are not with them to help guide them, protect them, and show them love if they need it. You're letting them to go out, be independent, deal with their own heartache, difficult situations. But this is where the trust and love that you built when they were young, the foundation you built from that time to where you could truly teach them about the gospel and the Bible, and the confidence and belief that no matter where they're at, Jesus is with them, and they can stand confidently and not be pushed back on their own faith. And then eventually have enough confidence to go through and talk that faith to others. If you haven't noticed, the gather and discipleship are going to be pretty close in this part. Because as we go through and start raising, we want them to go through and bring people back into the light. Let them have the opportunity to tell their own stories, how they were raised, how Jesus has impacted their life, the love that he gave them, and then they can go through and continue bringing individuals to Jesus as well. All the work that we put into our children isn't just to make them good kids. It isn't just get good grades, be the best athletes. For me, being able to rope, that is an expectation, but it isn't just to be the best. The love we put into them is so they can be saved themselves and save others. To spread the word of God and bring more in to these buildings like this. Now, as I've gotten older, I understand my dad uses analogy all the time because there is never really an answer for any of the questions I was asking him to begin with. And he can go through and use the same analogy for many different aspects of life as well. So as we went through and had some of these dogs that we were training, we didn't start, probably about half of them was actually puppies. Most of these were grown dogs that we brought in, started out with trust and love, showed them affection, started with the basics, built a foundation in those pens just like a puppy, and they were still effective at any age. God doesn't care about the age that when you start this training process. He just wants to know that you have started, that your love is there and his love is there, and you'll be able to go through and spread that word. Now, there are also times that we have all impacted people's lives. All of us have at some point. One person, 100 people, could be different stories. But you're not always going to be at that top level of training to where you're constantly gathering. You still have to go back to that training pen, build that foundation, maybe even go back to trust and love, and then step back up again. We're not always just at that point. My best dog, Crow, I constantly have to take him back into the training pen because he just got ran over by a cow when we were sorting. He lost that confidence. So we're going to build it back up. Or he got overconfident and he's starting to push too hard. Now let's bring him back. Reset those expectations and the understanding of why we are doing this in the first place. His job is to go out and bring more back. So through this time, we want to embrace the love that he gives us. We want to teach that love and confidence to our children of all ages, and then go through and watch them spread that love to others. That's the art that I see in the future, since I haven't gotten there yet, but that is the art of raising a child in my eyes. So I'll let you know in about 15 years how that analogy is working. But as of right now, I'm feeling confident.